Welcome back, Come On You Spurs TV. I've got my amazing co-host on the other side, and you join him after this little intro. Welcome back, Chuma with me. As you know, my name is Soji, and we are Come On You Spurs TV. How are you, Chuma?
Oh, I'm Spurs blessed, as they call it, not super blessed. Spurs blessed. To dare is to persevere. That's the new motto for Spurs. To dare is to persevere. Welcome, Come On You Spurs TV Nation. Welcome to Come On You Spurs TV, the podcast that gives you the perspective of Tottenham Hotspur and the football world from an Afrobeat or African perspective. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time viewing, thank you for viewing. If you could also click on notification bell to let you know every time we put out content, comment, tell us what you would like to hear, how you feeling out. We are all welcome here, and you're all welcome your comments. As always, it's Come On You Spurs TV.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, we welcome your comments, like as Chuma said. And you know what? We had out of 2 cups in 1 week, and of course, it can be very depressing when you're a Spurs fan. And we can sort of go and do a bit of post-mortem on what happened in those 2 matches. One of them lost very badly. The second one we lost badly too because of the nature of the goals, if you like. And you think to yourself, what's happening here? I mean, they had so much in terms of negativity across the whole of the Spurs, what you might call a nation, for want of a better expression. And it can be frustrating from a fan's perspective when, when you've had what you might call a bit of a winning habit before then, and then all suddenly, seems like a win seems to be like so far away from what we expect, and people now go into matches expecting us to lose. How did we get here?
Well, I think you start with I think you have to start with the fact that going out to those cups, if you look for the positives, like I always do, my part of the positives being we made it to the semi-final of the League Cup, which is more than we did last season. Last season we went out literally in the first round. I think the FA Cup as well. I don't know if we made it to the fourth round in the FA Cup last year. Similar thing. We've gone further in the cups than we did last season. So by any kind of metric, it's an improvement. I sympathize with Spurs fans that thought that we could win it all and we could win cups and da 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 and all that. But realistically, we're facing Liverpool at Anfield, and those guys are right now, they are setting the tone for what attacking football is. They're probably one of the best attacking sides in Europe, not even just in England. And we are always aware that it was going to be an uphill battle against Liverpool. The Villa game, on the other hand, because of the fact we've had a winning streak against Villa, 8-1 on aggregate in 2 matches. People held out hope that we could still do something against Villa, and especially at Villa Park where we've had recent successes and we don't really lose as much there. But I mean, it was two games in 36 hours. It was already poor against Liverpool because you could see it, and this fatigue. People say it's an excuse by Ange. I don't think it's an excuse. I really think the players have played. People like Pedro Porro, Kulusevski, and Archie Gray. They've put in a lot of minutes. They've played enough games. People like Son as well. But
let me interrupt you there for a brief second. I hope you don't mind, because I mean, I've listened to a few podcasts, and I mean, you get all sorts of views when it comes to how things are. I've also read some, I mean, what you might call perspectives from some players, and I want to sort of juxtapose both and see, I mean, what is right or which way should one lean. And let me explain. So I had a guy on the podcast yesterday. I said, look, at the end of the day, you're a manager, right? And as a manager, what you should do is to ensure that you use the resources that you have at your disposal to the best of your ability. So that means at the end of the day, the buck stops at your doorstep. And Ange, as you know, always says that look, it's my team. I make the decisions. If things go right, I take the credit. If things don't go great, I'm there as well to take the blame. So keep it on me. Don't blame the players, which is fair enough. But so that perspective says that you cannot blame or say extenuating circumstances, if you want to call it that, as the basis on which your team are not performing, because it's a league. The nature of the league is, or the nature of the season is that over the course of the season, you're going to have to plan on the basis that you're going to have XYZ number of matches over the course of the season. And because of that, you have times when you don't have some players available, and plan your team around ensuring that you get the best of them to get the best possible outcome, given whatever circumstances, however adverse they may appear at that point in time when you've got them playing. That's one perspective. The other perspective is that, hang on, I mean, I had read a piece by, I'm not sure if I mentioned this here before, by Nedum. Right? Nedum, I respect as a pundit. I actually think is really, really good. I don't always agree with his perspective, but he had this piece on BBC Sports, and I kind of, very, very difficult to argue against what he said. He said, look, injuries by their very nature are unpredictable, right? And because they're unpredictable, it's very difficult to plan against them. Now, when you have a team that has a significantly high number of injuries, right, you begin to ask yourself, what is the reason why this team is having so many injuries, right? And then you look at, okay, could it be the training methods? Now, if you look at the training method against the type of injuries, then you might say, oh, what is the training method? But the nature of the injuries are so diverse. It's not just muscle injury. It can be toe breaks. It can be ankle, bone, all sorts of stuff, different types of injuries. Some people have, elbows on their faces and stuff like that. So it's and concussion with what's his name? Bentancur. And of course, you have suspensions in between as well. So you have foot injury with Romero. So the injuries are so diverse, and so you cannot say, well, there's no evidence to suggest or to match that up to say that, oh, it's the training methods, or even the playing methods, because some people have said that, oh, it's the way that you play because you have high intensity, and because you have high intensity, then that ensures that means that you are more likely to have this, while there's evidence to suggest that may be the case. However, if you run it across the board and say, okay, the teams that have high intensity and they play very high in those sort of high frenetic pace type things, right? They always have the same issues as well. Look at Liverpool. Liverpool are your biggest pressures in the whole wide world, if you want to call it that, right? They don't have that, so this same sort of injuries that we have, if you want to put it that way. So again, that sort of discredits that perspective. So he's saying that, look, injuries are a much more complex situation, and as such, the number that Spurs have suffered so far at very high level, if you like, and given the fact that they're mostly key players that are playing the squad, there's no way that it would not have an effect on the but then again, you cannot say because you don't have what's the word, you have this level of injuries that you don't play or you don't put out the team. And then again, you have those who blame the ownership and say that, oh, maybe they could have gone out and bought players, right? And if they bought players in, I think that is another thing that's got to be managed that's another view says that it's something that's got to be managed in a measured way, i.e., you don't just go out and buy 4, 5, 6 players, right? Because you want to sort of show up an injury crisis. When that injury crisis abates, what happens to those players that you bought? Are you going to sideline them or not, or make them not play, or what's going to happen? So you have a very, very difficult and challenging squad management challenge from ownership perspective. So it's drawing that balance and having that balance between, okay, fine, we get a few stopgap measures in place, and how soon do we get them in? So, and we have people who have criticized the leadership and said, hang on, you can have brought those players in early. But if you look across the whole of the league, right, the vast majority of the business that took place in the league took place towards the end of the transfer thing. Because in most cases, people are always looking for people. They're going to actually either buy somebody, and when they buy somebody, when they sell somebody, they will have to replace that person with another player in most cases. So if they don't have a replacement, they're unlikely to let go of who they have. And some will say, okay, fine, how did Man City get 4 people in, so early in the game? The answer to that question is I don't know. A lot of people rely on rumor, conjecture, and all sorts of things, say, and conclude and reach conclusions which may not necessarily align with the truth when you look at it in bare terms. But there you go. I mean, that's. I just wanted to sort of put that in. Sorry, it's a big, long interruption.
No, no. I like the bit you said about Manchester City, because I can tell you how it was done. Those players Man City bought. Every other team looked at them as well. The defender, Spurs looked at him as well. He played for Lens. The same thing with the midfield player as well at Porto. Loads of teams looked at them. They went in January, and the clubs looked at them and said, okay, you want these guys? We'll give it to you for 50, 60, 70 million. No club is willing to take that risk in January of a 60, 70 million pound player, especially with FFP and PSR. So you have teams like Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa. They loved all these guys. It's the same thing I keep saying to people about football. Cristiano Ronaldo, I always use him as an example. Cristiano Ronaldo, if you watch the European under-17s during his time and the under-16, under-17s, under-18s, you knew who he was. If you're a football person or you're someone who loves football, you knew who he was. He wasn't a secret, right? Real Madrid wanted him. Barcelona wanted him. Inter Milan wanted him. Juventus, all these teams wanted Cristiano Ronaldo at 17. However, Sporting Lisbon, realizing they had a gem on their hands, set a price. They set a price for £12 million. And nobody was going to pay £12 million for a 17-year-old
at that time.
At that time. He played against Alex Ferguson in a preseason friendly, destroyed his right backs at the time. I think it was either Dennis Irwin or Gary Neville. Killed them. And they told him, this boy is the truth. Alex Ferguson went out and paid. All the other clubs were stuck on 8 million. They were not going to go beyond 8. Then add-ons. Sporting would have considered them. Also, Man United come out, which Alex Ferguson, I've said it time and time, and I don't mean it as an insult. He was one of the best checkbook managers I've ever seen in my life. Alex Ferguson, I was watching a podcast with Teddy Sheringham. Teddy Sheringham said, Alex Ferguson called him and said, come, you come. Because he buys the best players from other clubs. He doesn't haggle. The only time he had problems is when he met Daniel Levy. And that's another story for another podcast. But that's the thing. So you pay. Man City are what Alex Ferguson was. They came for Harry Kane because they knew he's the best player in the country. We will go for him. They wanted Declan Rice as well. The problem was the clubs either didn't want to sell or whatever happened, and that's how he did. In a normal basis, Harry Kane and Declan Rice will probably be in Man City at this moment in time. So that's the same thing now. January is this period where clubs go, I don't want to lose the player, but if you're willing to pay me an exorbitant amount, we'll give him to you. And Man City at this moment in time, you could almost call it desperation. Almost, They say, look, we need these guys. We need them now. And he paid. I believe Pep is going to go through an overhaul this summer. Several players are going to leave. Kyle Walker's left already. And let's not forget, Kyle Walker left with his huge wages as well. He's gone. So Kyle Walker's gone. Several pieces are going to move out of the table. Bernardo Silva as well. So he's preparing himself for all these eventualities as well. So that's
and De Bruyne is 33, apparently.
Yeah. And Spurs on the other hand, I watched something where Daniel Levy said, I don't go and buy players unless they improve my squad. And, underneath I saw the comment saying nonsense and trash. But if you think about it, if I'm being fair, Danso is, in my opinion, better than Dragusin. I believe he's better than Dragusin. So you've improved on Dragusin, who is out for the rest of the season. So you've improved on him slightly. Matisse Tell, I think, is an improvement on Timo Werner, who is also probably gone. If he had been fit, MLS were trying to get him. If he had been fit, he would have gone to MLS this transfer when it was possible. So Matisse Tel is an improvement on Timo Werner. In my opinion, I think he's going to be a better player than Richarlison is. So you've improved. So you've got two
Kinski?
improvements. Kinski, I think, is better at collecting crosses. I think long term, I think Anthony Kinski is going to be a better keeper than Guillermo Vicario. That's my personal opinion. I think that boy has more, and it's good that he's getting this baptism now of fire in the league and in the cups. He's gotten a baptism. People are doubting him, but that boy is special. He is a special goalkeeper, and he's just going to get better and better and better and better and better. And for me, it's a straight up competition now between him and Vicario. Vicario has the upper hand because of the experience, but Kinski, for his relatively young age, I think he is going to be a very good player. Now, it's midfield and stuff like that where I would have loved to see Archie Gray go back into midfield, like just to see like contrast with him and Bissouma, whom I have fallen out of love with. I still like Bissouma, but I just think we've been waiting for so long, and I really wanted him to prove Antonio Conte wrong in terms of Conte was like he can't adapt to certain systems, and maybe Brighton was the best thing for him. Because you look at Jed Spence, they call him the Jedi. He is amazing. Like Jed Spence to me has gone past the ceiling. I think people kept him under. I think he's broken from whatever prison of expectation that we had for him. He's broken through that prison. I don't know what to class him as. All I know is wherever you play Jed Spence, even if he will play in central defense, he'll be amazing. He's just right now he understands what he has to do in football. He's fully focused on football. I believe it now that the kid is completely on point. But back to Ange Postecoglou and his system. I think Ange has tweaked a lot of things. I really believe he's tweaked a lot of things to try to compensate for all the injuries and the absences. And like you said earlier on, it's true. You can't Cuti Romero. I'll give you an example. Cuti Romero with the ball. Once he gets the ball from the goalkeeper, he places his studs on the ball. He's attracting the attacking players from the opposition to press him. As soon as you press him, he passes in between you. He's that good. He's that gifted. Van de Ven will run past you. He'll progress the ball. You can't get an identical player to each of these guys. It's impossible. So the minute they're out, your quality has dropped. It's dropped. Ever so slightly or ever so much, it's dropped because Ben Davies is the opposite. Ben Davies can play between lines. He loves trading a certain kind of pass. It's the way once Ben Davies gets the ball, I see his body shape. I know exactly what Ben Davies is going to do. But he's not Cuti Romero and he's not Van de Ven.
Yep.
Ben Davies is more positional than pace. So if he's not positioned right, striker will have his way with Ben Davies. But Ben Davies is so good. I laud him, and people think, he's a good pro in the fact that he knows what his deficiency is. He doesn't have that pace. So he makes sure he tries to position himself in such a way. You've seen the goal line clearances, seasons pass, and even he's always that guy that he knows where you're going to go to. He anticipates because of his experience. But it's not the same as having Van de Ven. Udogie as well. Udogie is very good at advancing a ball. Very, very good at advancing the ball. And Spence and him do it in two different ways. You're losing that. You're losing all these things. And like you said, there's no way to mitigate against injuries and prepare for it. And this Spurs season, you talked about Liverpool under Klopp, their first season, the injuries were stacking up because it's a change in style. We had the same thing last year, and it wasn't meant to happen this year. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think the medical staff have a lot of issues as well. And we've been talking about Spurs medical teams for years. But when I look at players who have gone out either on loan or have gone out permanently, that used to be kind of injury prone, and I'm seeing what's happening to them now. Case in point, Japhet Tanganga is at Millwall. He's played like 48 straight games. Tanganga would get injured every 5 at Spurs. He'll get injured in training. And then his medical thing, it took him so long to get back. Tanganga has been injury-free. Mano Solomon lost an entire season. Mano Solomon scored and assisted yesterday again for Leeds. I think Manu Solomon. You know from what I've said here, I was a huge fan. I was so disappointed that we let him go. Politically, I can understand with his political stance being an Israeli player, and he made certain comments on social media. I always think politics and football should be separate, but it is what it is. But Manu Solomon is doing very well, and he's been injury free. 25 or so more games for Leeds. Giovanni Lo Celso, Betis, playing, So the numbers go on and on and on. These guys are injured. So at some point, I think the medical teams will have to take a good look. There has to be some kind of medical audit as well. But with the players returning, I see Spurs climbing up the table. I think I really believe we can make the top half. I really do. And like I said to you earlier on, there's one cup left, one cup to rule them all, the Europa League.
Yeah, we were talking about a lot of the rings and all that sort of thing, right? And it's. Can you possibly just go back on that, because I think it's something that our viewers would love to hear.
For those of you on ComeonyespursTV, I'm a real nerd. Forget the glasses. I love sci-fi. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. Original Lord of the Rings, the book, and the Peter Jackson movies. And there's the whole thing about Sauron. One ring that rules all the other rings. One ring to rule them all. So I look at Spurs now and Ange. I always win in my second season, and 2 cups down, 1 cup left. This 1 cup to rule them all. If and when Ange wins this cup, fingers crossed, toes crossed as well. It makes up for everything. If he hedges his bets on this Europa League, if he comes in the top 10 and he wins the Europa League, will Spurs fans consider that a successful season? I would consider that a successul season.
That takes us straight into Champions
League, which is what Daniel Levy and Enoch. That's their benchmark for Spurs.
That's the holy grail.
Yeah, that's in terms of work. His KPIs. Yeah. That was there. That was written down for him at start of the season. Get us in the top 4. Get us into Champions League. But now, if Champions League is through Europa League and we can do something there. And with the returning players, because you and I spoke earlier on, Odebear is back in training. Destiny Udogie is back in training. Madison is back in training. Vicario is back in training. Brennan Johnson's back in training. Love him or hate him, Timo Werner's back in training as well. And Dominic Solanke is back as well. So you're looking at these players. The only one missing is Cuti Romero, where people are saying, where is Cuti? He's like, like it's find him. You can't see him in anything. I believe he's coming back. I heard a rumor that they would allow him go and link up with the Argentine squad to gain fitness with them as well. I don't know how true that is, but he's coming back. There are also the stories out that Spurs are trying to tie him down to the best contract in the club. He's going to be a higher earner than Son in order to keep him. But the rumors abound that, Real Madrid and the rest are on him. Real Madrid are looking at him. And they're looking at him and Saliba and Arsenal as their next big centre-back.
Pairings.
So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, we'll see how the season ends. I think it's all down to how the season ends. And we're in February right now. We have 3 months, 90 days. A lot can happen in 90 days.
Yeah, I mean, talking of where we are now in terms of league position, the fact that we've got only one position left that we're part of, which is the Europa League we talked about, and how the whole vibe in the club is at the moment, right? And it reminds me of a little bit like Chelsea when Poch took over at the beginning of the season, and he had a very torrid time. I mean, in the very first half of the season, but by the time his injuries came back, the guys who were injured came back, and by the time he sort of started to get a grip on how he wanted to play, or the guys understood, style, and obviously people like Caicedo, who hadn't quite settled down into the league. Look at the same team now, and okay, granted they got, I mean, a different money, but even towards the end of last season, he actually got them into Conference League, and whoever was watching them at that time would have thought there was no chance the way everything was going. And I think that may be something similar that we will end up doing at the end of the season, in the second half of the season. I mean, what do you reckon?
I completely agree. I look at Pochettino. I also look at Newcastle as well. Newcastle last season, they had um, they had the Champions League. They had the league. Their squad was stretched. They started getting injuries, same as we are now. And Newcastle had to persevere. They still ended up coming sixth because they had a run. Once they were out of everything, they had a run where they just kept winning. Pochettino as well. At the end of last season, Pochettino had worked out what his double pivot was, and then Pochettino had worked out the players. Certain players had come back from injury, worked out how good Cole Palmer was, how he was going to utilize him, and then they would say winning. They just went on a winning streak. They just didn't lose games. Chelsea were just winning, and that's why when he left or he was sacked, whichever way, mutual consent. I don't quite get those terms. I always think it's a sacking. Um, and certain fans are like, look, the guy finally cracked it. But they moved on to. I think they moved on to better in Maresca for themselves. I don't think Pochettino is a Chelsea guy. And I think Maresca is more that kind of coach that they need as well. So yeah, I look at the same thing with Ange. He gets his players back. There's there's no accounting for what he can do psychologically as well to now be back at training. Like,
Yeah,
can you imagine? Can you imagine our guys going to training and you're seeing, no disrespect to them, I love them, like Demola Ajayi and all these kids. You're like, these are the kids. The kids are training with us now. But now you start to see Kuti come back, Van de Ven. You start to see all the bigger players. Mentally, you're like, yeah, we're going to go for it now. But you're so scared of getting injured because if you get injured, it's one of these little boys that's going to come in and he's
absolutely.
going to
And
get
they're ready.
killed.
They're ready.
So it's one of those things as well. So you're looking at it, but I also look at everything as a blessing. I think if you look for a silver lining in every cloud, you look at these boys. You look at Dane Scarlett. I think Dane Scarlett has improved. I think Demola Ajayi is going to be something because nobody knew who Demola Ajayi was. There's certain boys in Spurs. I'm so happy that during this period, these boys have come to the fore. You're now seeing them, and now everyone's going, what about this? One disappointment for me is Tyrese Hall. I expected Tyrese Hall to make it into the first team. I don't know what's going on. There are rumors of an attitude thing and stuff. He's one of those ones that should have come in because he's a central midfielder playing where Bissouma and the rest play. He was supposed to be the next great thing, but I heard there's some kind of thing going on with him, and so he's not being promoted to the senior squad the way he should have. But I hope he still makes a comeback. But they're boys. There's so many kids itching. And then if we do a little loan report, Lancashire played his first game for West Brom. He came on last 24 minutes. West Brom fans love him. They're like, this boy is a big unit that knows how to put his body about. Like, Lancashire is doing well. And, cup game, Leighton Orient had our goalkeeper, Josh Keeley, and had, the man of the moment, Jamie Donnelly. A man
They don't
for,
leave.
for,
With that
for
Beckham next goal. Eh?
for Pep Guardiola that where they say things make you that goal has made Jamie Donnelly.
Yeah. Yeah.
People won't see it, but let's all remember that
Against Man City for that matter,
against Man
against Man
City
City no less. That's really, really good. Really, really good.
yeah, the
Yeah.
cojones to pull that off. And you watch how that boy. I've been watching him at Leighton Orient. I've been following him, and I've been seeing he started off not too well. All of a sudden, he started building and building and building, and you could see him slowly coming to his own. Because people who don't know Jamie Donnelly started off as a striker. Then he moved him to the left. Then he started exhibiting this hurricane behaviors of wanting to create more than he scored. And Jamie Donnelly, mark my words, and he said he has to play for Spurs. He has to play. It's not a question of selling him. He wants to play for Spurs. I think that boy has a certain hunger. Unfortunately, the manager of Leighton Orient, came out with some silly
The faux pas.
comments. I think maybe he'd had something to drink or he was caught up in the moment. And I think, yeah, that I love the way Ange batted off the question when they asked him. He said, look, he's had his 5 minutes. I'm not going to extend. It's nothing to talk about, But I'm happy he didn't pull those players. Some spiteful managers whom we've had in previous years, names withheld, would have pulled those boys. Would have pulled them. Say, "Oh, I'm helping
Not
you."
all those who has a son as a pundit, no?
Well, but it's kind of interesting how with the pundits on TV, how they always seem to gun Spurs in a way like when the same thing happens to other teams. I think there's a lot more sympathy. but the way they gun Spurs sometimes, I don't know. I'm not saying an agenda. I'm not saying, Arsenal fans will say theirs as well. Like, oh yeah, they have an agenda. But Spurs' one is like everyone in the country makes fun of Spurs. It's like we're just easy targets, the whole Spursy thing and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And like I said, we all look forward to the day, and it will come. It will come.
Definitely.
Everybody is seeing this. Yeah, I tell people one day.
I would love to hear from you guys. If you're watching this, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's been absolutely wonderful having Chuma, of course, going over the last couple of matches. We're looking forward to welcoming Man United on Sunday to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I would love to hear from you. Are you in it out? Lilywhite in, Lilywhite out? Are you Ange out? Can you imagine the kind of polarity that the club has descended into at this point in time? There you go.
Civil war.
That's where we're at. Call it the civil war. The
Tottenham
pause
Civil
and
War.
and the toxic, all of it coming together. But hey, at the end of the day, we're all Spurs. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.